Hello and welcome back to Ame's Bookshelf. I'm author Teresa Garcia, also known as Amehana Arashi. In this visit to the bookshelf, I am discussing two books, both by author J.D. Stonebridge. These are the last two books in the Prime Insurgency series. Book number 10 is entitled 10 Great Beams. And in this book we learn what happens with Tony, picking up where he got separated from Lance, and we become a bit more intimate with Sunchild, or Rathanos. And we also discover that this particular Prime is a huge bookworm, contributing even more to the great care which the author has taken to give all of his characters their own little lives and idiosyncrasies. I have to compare him with Toth and with Apollo, just because of the way he is. He matches quite well the way that those particular deities are presented in the different stories that we have access to. Now, we don't get brought all the way up to where Tony and Lance meet again from Tony's viewpoint at the start. We can go more into that in 11th Hour, which is the next book. In this particular book, we do learn about two plans, Rathanos' plan and that of the Zeus-type Prime. So this adds further layers to an already very intricate plot. It's very much like a tapestry, a very good one, very well woven in my opinion. Every little thread is accounted for. I do have to admit that I very squarely ended up falling into the pantheon of the Greco-Roman time frame, just because of the way that these primes were all described. It just fit too well, and I probably should not have fallen into that so as to give the characters even more room to be themselves, but it happened. It might very well be the author's intent. So, with that in mind, I do have to wonder whether or not in this particular worldview, if Sunchild Rathanos is also the seed for Amaterasu, or if Amaterasu is another Prime entirely in the Prime groupings, or if he even was thinking about other particular pantheons, or just as the planetary forces as a whole. So that really got me thinking deep. It was very intriguing in my opinion. It gave my little brain all kinds of little things to fiddle with as I was reading along. The writing I found to be well done. There weren't any plot holes that I could find. There was no Deus Ex Machina, nothing like that. There were a little stylistic things that did trip me up from time to time that I do believe were intended as style choices. Now, whether you are an editor that would let that slip or not, I don't know. But as a reader, yeah, okay. It didn't detract too much. And the characters are still well-rounded and becoming even more well-rounded in 3D the further one gets into the series. They have their own little story arcs which continue on off-screen as well as on-screen. So they're very dynamic. I also have to bring up how I really enjoyed how Tony, a scholar character, ends up standing up to the strongest Prime. Sure, it came out of temper, but I found that to be intensely gratifying that he had the backbone to do that. So there's just little tidbits like that all throughout this series. Now, moving on, we come to the 11th and last book in this series, The 11th Hour. And again, this is by J.D. Stonebridge in the Prime Insurgency series. And very first thing, I'm going to admit that the very end of this book made me tear up. That is very hard to do, actually, but it succeeded. And yes, I'm speaking about this out of order, but it is the most impactful point in this particular book of the series. It was extremely well done. Even when there was a win, it was still also a defeat. So it was very, very true to life in that sense. And it really reminded me a lot of Miyazaki's works, because Hayao Miyazaki likes to depict humanity as it is, both in its good and its not so good points, and where there is nothing that is really truly evil, because it's all based on your viewpoint. And of course, whenever somebody wins, somebody is always going to lose. This particular book went very fast, but at the end it got extremely somber really quickly because of this scene. Also, even though we have the deity like primes, who within this worldview are the truth of the gods of the various religions, again, there's no deus ex machina in this. Everything is explainable, right down to the battle between the two father figures that happens in this, and a huge screw up that could have been avoided if it had not happened. Things would have gone very differently, and I found that very interesting, very well plotted. And I had to smirk a little bit about what was at the core of all this. Pride. Pride is the thing that got in the way and made everybody fall. And that is what I took from the story. It might not be what the author was shooting for, but it is what I took from the story. And even with the ending, the story isn't truly ended. There is an epilogue, which leaves an open thread, which is not a loose thread, but an open thread. It sets us up for another adventure, whether or not we get to follow Tony and find out what continues in this adventure in another frame of the tapestry. I don't know. I would be interested if the author did. I would certainly be watching for it. I certainly ended up putting them on my follow list a long time ago now. And just, I really hope to see that new storyline that's set up with Tony and Lance and Lauren, and see what happens with that. Getting to the technical stuff, the writing is very good. It's very meaty. The characters are just as alive in this book as they are in the previous books. Very well done interplays of character and plot. It keeps the pages turning, and it keeps them turning at speed. You get very attached to the characters. I found myself grimacing whenever they got hit. I felt bad when some of them died. And it was very well done. Now, there were a few places that jarred me out of the flow, but the story was pulling me along so fast that I hadn't realized that I had been jarred until I was, you know, several pages further on, and it was too late to just, you know, scroll back and go, what? There was a comma, what? Where? Little things like that. It really, there wasn't a lot of those. So that was well done, because even in your big professional productions, you still see typos and things like that come in. So it was a very low number of those. It was a very enjoyable book. Good story, well done, well plotted. And I would really recommend this for anybody that likes contemporary sci-fi, anybody that likes fantasy, anybody that likes paranormal or mystery. I think that you would enjoy this very much. As for age ranges, I would say, you know, teens. Maybe maybe a few preteens would enjoy this. And then it goes up from there. It's, you know, pretty much almost all ages. You know, not like your little kids, but, you know, the kids that are coming out of their shells, starting to get a taste of the world, you know, going through their own coming of age stuff. This is the kind of thing that they, in my opinion, should read, because it has strong characters. They overcome their own personal little problems. It doesn't make them all better, but they accept them and they play from their strengths, and they take into account their flaws so that their flaws don't bring them down. And that's something I think that all kids need to learn how to do. So that's pretty much it. It was a very good series. I greatly enjoyed it and definitely recommend it. And I look forward to seeing you again in another review video. I will probably, hopefully, get the Writer's Handbook review recorded soon and get that put up. I have a few other things that I'm working on as well. So I will see you in another video. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening and sharing. And have a good night.